follow along and type.
Start by taking several deep cleansing breaths. Relax, release, bring the mind home. Scan your body. Notice and release any tension. And assume your meditation posture. And release any attachments and aversions you might be bringing with you from the day. Any grasping. Notice, for example, if your eyes are grasping, and soften them a bit. Maybe slightly shift your awareness to your third eye, that area. And bring your mind home to this place of study and practice together. And be spacious as we begin. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering, and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, so good to see everybody. Sandra, good to see you tonight. Jane and Jerry, good to see you. Louisa, I see that you're there. Hello. So saying hello to everybody. We've said hello to most everybody else. And Bhavani, good to see you out of the corner of my eye. Yes. So last week we did something a little different where we had one person reading an entire prayer. So I got a little bit of feedback that was very good, that people liked that because it gave people a chance to really focus on a particular prayer without thinking about when does their turn come up and so on. So we'll do that again tonight. And to keep things fresh, we're going to do things, recite a couple of things that we haven't recited in a little while. And then we're going to have a talk about the Buddha families, the 5 Buddha families. We're going to continue that we started last week, where we talk about the 5 Buddha families, the head of the family, the male and female, and the 2 male bodhisattvas and the 2 female bodhisattvas. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that to give us a common understanding of what these first 5 days really mean, and how we can be generating our practice to be mindful of these 5 Buddha families within ourselves, because all this is within ourselves, and these are all symbols of that which is within ourselves. So to get started, please, let's begin by we're going to start with the root verses of the 6 intermediate states on page 1. So Michael, will you read that entire prayer, please? And then when that is finished, then will French, will you please read the 10 branch prayer that begins on page 7 and read that entire prayer. And then after that, then Sandra, will you read, please, the purification prayer on page 14? So read that entire prayer. And then the daily prayer for assistance, page 67. If William, will you read that, please? Page 67 and continue that through to page 70. That continues. All right, so if we'll do that, that will be wonderful. And please begin, Michael, when you're ready.
Could I ask that people, when we switch readers, they say what page we're on, just so we'll know where to turn?
Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, and one thing I should have asked, does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've been talking about? Something that we need to discuss? Okay, very good. So if you will begin with the next prayer. Thank you. Page 1.
Root verses of the 6 intermediate states. According to this cycle of teachings, the circle of birth and death can be seen as being composed of 6 intermediate states. These 6 modalities of existence are waking, living state, dreaming, and meditation, the time of death, and the 2 successive phases of the after-death state, are defined in the glossary. This poem emphasizes the centrally important perspective that relates to each of these states. It is recommended that practitioners should memorize these verses and recite them repeatedly while reflecting on their meaning throughout their lives. I bow down to the conquerors, the peaceful and wrathful deities. Alas, now as the intermediate state of living arises before me, renouncing laziness, for which there is no time in this life, I must enter the undistracted path of study, reflection, and meditation, taking perceptual experience and the nature of mind as the path. I must cultivate actualization of the three Buddha bodies. Now, having obtained a precious human body, this one time, I do not have the luxury of remaining on a distracted path. Alas, now as the intermediate state of dreams arises before me, renouncing the corpse-like insensitive sleep of delusion, I must enter free from distracting memories, the state of abiding nature of reality, cultivating the experience of inner radiance through the recognition, emanation, and transformation of dreams. I must not sleep like a beast, but cherish the experiential cultivation which mingles sleep with actual realization. Now, as the intermediate state of meditative consciousness arises before me, renouncing the mass of distractions and confusions, I must undistractedly enter a state which is devoid of subjective apprehension and free from the two extremes, and attain stability in the stages of generation and perfection. At this moment, having renounced activity, having attained a singular concentration, I must not fall under the sway of bewildering mental afflictions. Alas, now as the intermediate state of the time of death arises before me, renouncing all attachments, yearning, and subjective apprehension in every respect, I must undistractedly enter the path on which the oral teachings are clearly understood, and eject my own awareness into the uncreated expanse of space. Immediately upon separation from this compounded body of flesh and blood, I must know this body to be like a transient illusion. And now, as the intermediate state of reality arises before me, renouncing the merest sense of awe, terror, or fear, I must recognize all that arises to be awareness, manifesting naturally of itself. Know such sounds, lights, and rays to be visionary phenomena of the intermediate state. At this moment, having reached this critical point, I must not fear the assembly of peaceful and wrathful deities which manifest naturally. Alas, now is the intermediate state of alas, now as the intermediate state of rebirth arises before me, I must with one pointed intention concentrate my mind and resolutely connect with the residual potency of my virtuous past actions. I must obstruct the womb entrance and call to mind the methods of reversal. This is the time when perseverance and purity of perception are imperative. I must give up all jealousy and meditate on my spiritual teacher with consort. From the mouth of the accomplished masters come these words. Oh, you, with your mind far away, thinking death will not come, entranced by the pointless activities of this life, if you were to return empty-handed now, would not your life's purpose have been utterly confused? Recognize what it is that you truly need. It is a sacred teaching for liberation. So should you not practice this divine and sacred teaching, beginning from this very moment? And it is also said, if I choose not to take the oral teachings of the spiritual teacher to heart, am I not the deceiver of myself? Alas, now as the intermediate state of rebirth arises before me, I must with one pointed intention concentrate my mind and resolutely connect with the residual potency of my virtuous past actions. I must obstruct the womb entrance and call to mind the methods of reversal. This is the time when perseverance and purity of perception are imperative. I must give up all jealousy and meditate on my spiritual teacher with consort. Page 7.
Page 7.
Page 7.
Natural liberation of habitual tendencies. The 10-branched prayer for the accumulation of merit. Visualize in the space before you the 3 precious jewels and the deities of the 100 enlightened families, and then recite as follows. The branch of taking refuge. Om, Ah, Hum. I respectfully take refuge, inseparably from now until enlightenment, in the infinitude of peaceful and wrathful deities, the conquerors gone to bliss, the 3 precious jewels, the meditational deities, the ocean of Dakinis, and the assembly of oath-bound protectors within the infinite Buddha fields reaching to the limits of space. The branch of invitation. I request the infinite peaceful and wrathful deities of the 10 directions and 4 times, compassionate emanations embodying discriminative awareness and skillful means, pervading the vast infinite space of reality's expanse, to come to this place for the sake of all living beings. Rejoice and summon them. The branch of requesting the deities to be seated. I request that the meditational deities be seated here on sun, moon, and lotus cushions, symbolizing skillful means, discriminative awareness, and their stainless union upon their bejeweled thrones, fashioned in the form of lions and so forth, in an attitude of unblemished supreme delight within this mandala of pristine cognition, which is the natural purity of phenomenal existence. The branch of paying homage. I bow down to the assembly of the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, to the father and mother deities and all their offspring, whose essence is the pristine cognition of Samantabhadra, displayed as uncorrupted bliss in the secret womb of Samantabhadri. The branch of making offerings. I request the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, the oceans of those gone to bliss, to partake of these inestimable outer, inner, and secret offerings, both those actually arrayed and those mentally emanated, which are offered for the benefit of all living beings. The branch of the confession of negativity. I acknowledge and remorsefully confess all my negative obscurations and all my habitual tendencies of body, speech, and mind, beginninglessly influenced by the 3 poisons which are the accumulating causes for rebirth among the lower states of suffering in cyclic existence. The branch of sympathetic rejoicing. I rejoice with great delight in the Buddha fields of supreme bliss, where all phenomenal existence is recognized as the pervasion of reality's expanse. I rejoice in all compassionate acts, in their merits, and in their altruistic intention, and in all deeds that are the source of merit and pristine cognition. The branch of the dedication of merit to the unsurpassed greater vehicle.
I think you missed a page. Page 12.
Yeah, where is it? Oops. You're right, thank you. Wow. The branch of turning the wheel of the sacred teachings. I exhort the teachers throughout the fields of the 10 directions, who are as numerous as atoms, to serve from their meditative commitments for the sake of all sentient beings, and to turn the wheel of the sacred teachings and thus entirely pervading the reaches of space. the branch of requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. I beseech you, O teachers, infinite Buddhas without exception, to remain present and not to pass on into parinirvana and to continue enact deeds of extensive benefit for the sake of beings until the world systems of cyclic existence have been emptied. The branch of the dedication of merit to the unsurpassed greater vehicle. By the power of whatever past, present, and future virtues I accumulate, may all sentient beings throughout the furthest reaches of space mature into worthy recipients of the unsurpassed greater vehicle, and then swiftly attain the status of the infinite, peaceful, and wrathful deities. As the 10-branched prayer is concluded, the Lama visualizes that all the objects of refuge melt into light and then gradually dissolve into the crowns of each of the attending persons, including the dying person and himself.
Page 14, natural liberation of habitual tendencies, purification. Om Ahum Bodhicitta Mahasukha Janadatu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hom Yo Dro Hom. Om Ahum Bodhicitta Mahasukha Janadatu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hom Dro Hom. Om Ahum Bodhicitta Mahasukha Janadatu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Hom Dro Hom. It is the unified intention of the body, speech, and mind of the 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities of the great Buddha field that displays the wisdom that cuts through all ignorance to manifest their wisdom for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings. From the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty, intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva. Seated upon a bejeweled throne adorned with lotus, sun, and moon cushions, the right hand holds a vajra at the heart, symbolizing the union of awareness of absolute wisdom and emptiness. The left hand supports a bell resting on the hip, symbolizing the union of wisdom, appearances, and emptiness. And the head is adorned with a garland of perfect Buddhas, representing the 5 enlightened families of those gone to bliss. Thus, Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource, exquisitely adorned with silks and jewels, seated in the posture of royal ease with the right leg extended and the left drawn in. Radiating at the heart is the seed syllable Hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. Om Bensra Sato Samaya, Manu Palaya, Benzo Sato Tenopa, Tishto Drido Mebawa, Suto Kayo Mebawa, Supo Kayo Mebawa, Anorakto Mebawa, Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa, Sarva Karma Sutsame, Sedam Shriyam Kuruham, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagawan, Sarva Tata Kata, Benzra Mame Munsa, Benzra Bawa Mahasamaya, Sato Ah. Om Benjo Sato Samaya, Manu Palaya, Benjo Sato Tenopa, Tishto Drido, Mebawa, Sito Kayo Mebawa, Sipo Kayo Mebawa, Honorakto Mebawa, Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa, Sarva Karma, Sutsa Me, Siddham Shriyam Kuruham, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagawan, Sarva Tata Kata, Benja Mame Munsa, Benja Bawa Mahasamaya, Sato Ah. Om Benzo Sato Samaya, Manu Palaya, Benzo Sato Tenopa, Tishto Drido Mebawa, Sito Kayo Mebawa, Supo Kayo Mebawa, Anorakto Mebawa, Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata, Sarva Karma Sutsame, Siddham Shriyam Kuruham, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagawan, Sarva Tata Kata, Benzra Mame Munsa, Benzra Pawama, Samaya Sato Ah. Page 67 is next.
'67. Aspirational prayer calling to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for assistance. Recite each day. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, abiding in the 10 directions, refuge of living beings imbued with compassion, imbued with knowledge, imbued with clear vision, and imbued with love. Come to this place by the power of your compassion and accept these displayed and visual offerings. O compassionate ones, as you are the fountain of all knowing, pristine cognition of loving compassion, of effective activity, and of a prayer to grant refuge beyond conception, come to this place. O compassionate ones, this human being, Rikibu, child of Buddha nature, William, is leaving this world and journeying to another shore. He is being cast off from this world and approaching the great transition of death. Suffering deeply, he is without a friend, without a refuge, without a protector, and without a companion. His perception of this life is fading away. He is moving on to another world, entering a dense darkness and falling into a fathomable abyss, entering the thick forest of doubt. He will be driven on by the potency of past actions. He will be entering a great wilderness, borne away on a great ocean and driven on the vital winds of past actions. He will be moving in a direction where there is no firm ground. There's no firm ground. Entering a great battlefield, being seized by great malevolent forces and becoming overwhelmed by fear and terror. Upon meeting the executioners of the unfailing laws of cause and effect, in accordance with his past actions, powerless to resist, he may even yet again be entering the realms of rebirth. The time has come when he has no choice but to move on, alone, leaving his dear friends behind. O compassionate ones, grant refuge now to this person, Rikibu, child of Buddha nature, William, who has no refuge. Protect him, be his companion, defend him from the great darkness of the intermediate state. Turn back the great hurricane of past actions. Protect him from the great fear and terror of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. Rescue him from the long and dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. O compassionate ones, be sparing in your compassion, be unsparing in your compassion. Grant assistance to him. Do not allow him to be expelled into the three kinds of inferior existence. Without wavering from your ancient vows, swiftly release the power of your compassion. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for the sake of this person, Ricky Boo, William, be unsparing in your compassion. Do not allow this sentient being to fall under the power of negative past actions. O three precious jewels, protect us from the suffering of the intermediate state. This is Om Mani Padme Hum.
Om Aha.
Om Aha. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bhavani, would you read this one time? We should read this 3 times. So Bhavani, would you read this? And then you read it one time, and then Tom, would you read for the 3rd time, please? So
What did you want me to read, Lance?
the same prayer, beginning on page 67.
Okay. Aspirational prayer, calling to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for assistance. Recite each day. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, abiding in the 10 directions, refuge of living beings, imbued with compassion, imbued with knowledge, imbued with clear vision, and imbued with love, come to this place by the power of your compassion and accept these displayed and visualized offerings. O compassionate ones, as you are the fountain of all-knowing, pristine cognition of loving compassion, of effective activity, and of a power to grant refuge beyond conception, come to this place. O compassionate ones, this human being, Rikibu, child of Buddha nature, Bhavani, is leaving this world and journeying to another shore. She is being cast off from this world and approaching the great transition of death. Suffering deeply, she is without a friend, without a refuge, without a protector, and without a companion. Her perception of this life is fading away. She is moving on to another world, entering a dense darkness and falling into an unfathomable abyss. Entering the thick forest of doubt, she will be driven on by the potency of past actions. She will be entering a great wilderness, borne away on a great ocean and driven on by the vital winds of past actions. She will be moving in a direction where there is no firm ground, entering a great battlefield, being seized by great malevolent forces, and becoming overwhelmed by fear and terror upon meeting the executors of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. In accordance with her past actions, powerless to resist, she may even yet again be entering the realms of rebirth. The time has come when she has no choice but to move on, alone, leaving her dear friends behind. O compassionate ones, grant refuge now to this person, Rikibu, child of Buddha nature, Bhavani, who has no refuge. Protect her, be her companion, defend her from the great darkness of the intermediate state. Turn back the great hurricane of past actions. Protect her from the great fear and terror of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. Rescue her from the long and dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. O compassionate ones, be unsparing in your compassion. Grant assistance to her. Do not allow her to be expelled into the three kinds of inferior existence. Without wavering from your ancient vows, swiftly release the power of your compassion. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for the sake of this person, Rikibu, child of Buddha nature Bhavani, be unsparing in your compassion. Do not allow this sentient being to fall under the power of negative past actions. O three precious jewels, protect us from the sufferings of the intermediate state. Om, Ah, Om.
Aspirational prayer, calling to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for assistance. Recite each day. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, abiding in the 10 directions, refuge of living beings, imbued with compassion, imbued with knowledge, imbued with clear vision, and imbued with love. Come to this place by the power of your compassion and accept these displayed and visual offerings. O compassionate one, as you are the fountain of all-knowing pristine cognition of loving compassion, of effective activities, and of a power to grant refuge beyond conception, come to this place. O compassionate one, this human being, O Buddha, O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Michael, is leaving this world and journeying to another shore. He is being cast off from this world and approaching the great transition of death. Suffering deeply, he is without a friend, without a refuge, without a protector, and without a companion. His perception of this life is fading away. He is moving on to another world, entering a dense darkness and falling into an unfathomable abyss. Entering the thick forest of doubt, he will be driven on by potencies of past actions. He will be entering a great wilderness, borne away in a great ocean, and driven on by the vital winds of past actions. He will be moving in a direction when there is no firm ground, entering a great battlefield, being seized by great malevolent forces, and becoming overwhelmed by fear and terror upon meeting the executors of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. In accordance with his past actions, powerless to resist, he may even yet again be entering the realm of rebirth. The time has come when he has no choice but to move on, alone, leaving his dear friends behind. O compassionate ones, grant refuge now to this person, Rikibu, Michael, who has no refuge. Protect him, be his companion, defend him from the great darkness of the intermediate state. Turn back the great hurricane of past actions. Protect him from the great fear and terror of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. Rescue him from the long and dangerous pathway of the intermediate state. O compassionate ones, be sparing in your compassion. Grant assistance to him. Do not allow him to be expelled into the three kinds of inferior existence. Without wavering from your ancient vows, swiftly release the power of your compassion. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for the sake of this person, Rikibu, Michael, be unsparing in your compassion. Do not allow the sentient beings to fall under the power of negative past actions. O three precious jewels, protect us from the suffering of the intermediate state. Om Ahum.
Thank you very much. So we would read these aloud 3 times by oneself and others present, and may its impact not cease until cyclic existence has been emptied. Let good auspices prevail. So now we normally would go on and continue reading part 1, the time of death recitation and the daily recitations after death, and then the day 1, day 2, day 3, and continue on like that. We've done that several times, so I would like to read day 4 and day 5 because we've only done those one other time. So Jerry, would you mind please reading day 4, the Padma family? And then Jane, would you read day 5, the Karma family after that? So that begins on page, day 4 begins on page 94, and day 5 begins on page 98. Jerry, I'm sorry, your microphone's not on.
I'm sorry. Okay. Day 4. Sorry. O child of Buddha nature, Ricky Boo, Jerry, listen without distraction. On the 4th day, the purity of the element fire will arise in the form of a red light. At that time, from the red western Buddha field of the blissful Sakavati, the transcendent Lord Amitabha will dawn before you, his body red in color, holding in his right hand a lotus flower, seated on a peacock throne and embraced by his supreme consort Pandaravasini. They are encircled by 2 male bodhisattvas, Avalokitesvara and Manjushri. The 2 female bodhisattvas, Gita and Aloka. Thus, 6 Buddha bodies will be shining before you from within the space of rainbow light. A red light, indicative of the pristine cognition of discernment, which is the natural purity of the aggregate of perceptions, red and dazzling, adorned by greater and lesser seminal points, radiant, bright, and dazzling, will emanate brilliance, that your eyes cannot bear it. Do not be afraid. Together with the light of pristine cognition, a dull yellow light, indicative of the realm of anguished spirits, will also dawn before you and touch your heart. Do not delight in the dull yellow light. Do not become attached to it, and do not cling to it. At this time, under the sway of deep desire, you will wish to turn away in fear and terror from the bright red light, and you will come to delight in the dull yellow light of the anguished spirits and feel attachment toward it. At this moment, abandon your fear and recognize the red light, bright and dazzling, radiant and clear, to be pristine cognition. Let your awareness relax and abide directly within it, in a state of non-activity. Have confidence in the radiant red. 96. Okay. Luminosity. Be drawn to it with longing devotion. If you recognize this radiance as the natural luminosity of your own awareness, even though you may feel no devotion toward it and have not recited the aspirational prayer, all the Buddha bodies and light rays will dissolve inseparably into you, and you will attain Buddhahood. If you are unable to recognize the radiance in this way, then pray with devotion, thinking, this is the light ray of the transcendent Lord Amitabha's compassion. Be devoted to it. Do not turn away. Should you turn away, the luminosity will accompany you inseparably. Do not be afraid. Do not be attached to the dull yellow light of the anguished spirits. This is the inviting path created by your own habitual tendencies for deep-seated desire, which you yourself have generated. If you become attached to this dull light, you will fall down into the realm of the anguished spirits. You will experience unbearable sufferings of hunger and thirst. This dull light is an obstacle blocking the path of liberation. Do not be attached to it. Abandon your attachment. Do not cling to it. Be devoted to the red light, which is radiant and dazzling, and focus intently and singly-mindedly on the transcendent Lord Amitabha and his consort, and recite the following aspirational prayer. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated desire, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on the path to radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort, Pandaravasini, support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated desire, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort Pandaravasini support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated desire, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort Pandaravasini support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. More?
Just that paragraph.
By making this aspirational prayer with fervent devotion, you would dissolve into radiant light in the heart of the transcendent Lord Amitabha and his escort, and you will attain Buddhahood, and as the Buddha body of perfect resource in the Western Buddha field of the blissful Sukhavati.
Day 5. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Jain, listen without distraction. On the 5th day, the purity of the entire wind element will arise in the form of a green light. At that time, from the green northern Buddha field, called Matrix of Enlightened Activities, Karma Prasiddhi, the transcendent Lord Amoghasiddhi with his retinue will dawn before you, his body green in color, holding in his right hand a crossed vajra, seated on a Sivamasivka bird throne, and embraced by his supreme consort, Samayatara. These two are encircled by two male Bodhisattvas, Vajrapani and Nirvana Vishkapin, and two female Bodhisattvas, Ganta and Narti. Thus 6 Buddha bodies will be shining before you from within a space of rainbow light. A green light indicative of the pristine cognition of accomplishment, which is the natural purity of the aggregate of motivational tendencies, green and dazzling, radiant and clear, bright and awesome, adorned by greater and lesser seminal points, will emanate from the heart of Amago Siddhi and his consort, and will shine piercingly before you at the level of your heart with such brilliance that your eyes cannot bear it. Do not be afraid. This is the natural expression power of your awareness. Rest in the state of great equanimity, transcending activity, free from the dichotomies of attachment and aversion, based on your feelings of nearness and distance. Together with the light of pristine cognition, a dull red light, indicative of the realm of the anti-guards, will also dawn before you and touch your heart. Cultivate an equanimity towards this dull light, which is free from attachment or aversion. Even if your mental capacity is diminished, at least do not delight in it. At this time, under the sway of deep envy, you will wish to turn away in terror from the bright and dazzling green luminosity, and you will come to feel delight and attachment towards the dull red light of the anti-guards. At this moment, abandon your fear and recognize the green luminosity, bright and dazzling, radiant and clear, to be pristine cognition. Let your awareness relax and abide directly within it, resting in a state of non-activity. Pray with devotion thinking. This is the light ray of the transcendent Lord, Amogahasiddhi companion. Take refuge in it. This, in reality, is the light ray hook of the transcendent Lord, Amagosiddhi compassion, which is known as the pristine cognition of accomplishment. Be devoted to it. Do not turn away. Even if you do turn away, the luminosity will accompany you inseparably. So do not be afraid. Do not be attached to the dull red light of the anti-gods. This is the inviting path of your past actions, which you yourself have engaged in, which whilst motivated by deep envy. If you become attached to this dull light, you will fall into the realms of the anti-gods and the experience of the unbearable sufferings of unrelenting conflict and quarreling. This dull light is an obstacle blocking the path to liberation. Do not be attached to it. Give up your yearning. Do not cling to it. Be devoted to the green light, which is radiant and dazzling, and focus intently and single-mindedly on the transcendent Lord Amogasiddhi and his consort, and recite the following aspirational prayer. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated envy, may the transcendent Lord Amogasiddhi draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of accomplishment. May the supreme consort, Samayatara, support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence driven by deep-seated envy, may the transcendent Lord Amagasiddhi draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of accomplishment. May the supreme consort Samaratara support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence driven by deep-seated envy, may the transcendent Lord Amagasiddhi draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of accomplishment. May the Supreme Consort Samayatara support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. By making this aspirational prayer with fervent devotion, you will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of the transcendent Lord Amagasatthiti and his consort, and you will attain Buddhahood as the Buddha body of perfect resource in the northern Buddha field called Matrix of Enlightened Activities, Karma Prasiddhi. Is there...
Very good. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions?
Lance, I have one if no one else does.
Sure, go ahead, Debbie.
On day 4
Mhm.
with Amitabha, when we're doing the Amitabha Monlam prayer and the aspiration of Sukhavati, the bodhisattvas are Avalokiteshvara and Vajrapani, but here it's Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri, and Vajrapani doesn't show up until the next day with Amoghasiddhi. And I'm just wondering, how do I take that on? What's the significance of that shift when we've been preparing with Vajrapani in the visualization?
That's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up, because what it speaks to is that there's many different practices.
Mhm.
And each practice may have a slightly different approach to the visualizations and so on. The practices have been composed by different great masters. This one in particular was composed by Padmasambhava. I can't say I know who did the brief prayer to be reborn in the Sukhavati prayer that you're referring to. I don't know who did that. For all I know, it could have been Buddha Shakyamuni. So it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong if you're thinking of one approach to another, but it is important to be able to adhere to the practice that you're doing and know that it's all meaning the same thing. It's all relating to the same thing, that all these deities are within ourselves. And it's just another way of looking at maybe these same deities from a slightly different perspective. So that's healthy. That's a good thing.
Thank you. That helps.
So the same thing is true. I sent you the mandala frame that I called it, which was just a blank, and it had the mandala picture in there, and it was there for everyone to fill in the blanks as we proceed along with these talks. That you can be taking notes, and you could be taking them relative to their position on this mandala wheel. That's what this wheel is, a mandala wheel. And we should think of it in terms of 3 dimensions. We only see it on the paper in 2 dimensions, but it's actually in 3 dimensions. So we talked about this last week. So anybody who might not have been here last week, we went into and started filling in some of the blanks on this. And if anybody has questions, I'll be glad to answer them again. However, the point that I wanted to make here was that this mandala wheel that we're using here has a particular order of the segments, of the quadrants, of the colors. And this practice that was composed by Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, this was the way that he visualized this, and this is the way that he taught this. There are other practices where, in particular, some of the colors are switched around. So in particular, we would normally see that the white color would be in the center instead of the blue color in this. And that the blue color, or that the white color in the eastern section, and this mandala frame that we have, would then be blue. So it's not, it's nothing more than the approach of the practice. And we can talk more about this later on, but it's not anything that, should be, disruptive to your mindfulness of this. And we just get familiar with this and understand that in this practice, this is the way in which this is being displayed. So they'll see differences sometimes with the deities, particularly the female deities. Sometimes Buddha Lakkhana, who is in the Vajra family in this practice, is in the Ratna family, the consort of Ratnasambhava. And then his consort, Mamaki, becomes the consort to Ascobia. So again, it's by the vision of the particular composer of that practice and so on. And by doing that practice, you're approaching the deity in a slightly different manner, which I said becomes very healthy to be able to see it in different ways. So it's all, remember, this is all symbolic. This is all symbolic of our phenomenal nature. This is all conceptual to allow us to be able to recognize all this within ourselves, that we can transcend this. We use these symbolisms so that we can transcend ourselves to the clear light, to that which is non-conceptual. So we always have to keep that in mind. So thank you, Debbie, for bringing that up. Anybody have any questions or concerns about that? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Lance, can you say a bit more about three-dimensionality? Does that mean that, for example, on your pattern here, that Vairocana and the Buddha family are higher up? They're at the top?
Good question. Just give me a moment. All right, so here is the frame. I presume everybody can see this. So yes, so here we are looking at what might be considered to be the very top here in the center. So in this part here, you see the center, the blue, and then you see the green, and then the white, the yellow, and the red. Everybody can see that. Then this band right here, this lower band here, would be a step below that. And then these here, these are gateways. These are like doors to get into this part here. So here would be a gateway, here would be a yellow gateway, here would be a red gateway, and here would be a green gateway. I presume you can all see that. Is that correct? Debbie, can you tell me?
Yes, I
Okay.
can see that. Yes.
So yes, so we would see that in those three dimensions in that way. So that's a very simple description. And remember, the bell, like this bell here, right now you're looking at it and you're only seeing it in 2 dimensions. But then when we turn it, we can see it in 3 dimensions. So the same thing is true with these mandalas like that. So as we get more and more familiar with this, we begin to understand. As we proceed with more detail and more deities, then there are more levels that will be introduced and so on. So we're trying to keep it simple so that we can grasp, simple ideas right in the beginning and then expand as we go along.
Lance?
Yes.
So is there symbolism to the idea that that in the Bardo we encounter the deities and their families first at day 1 at the very top of the mantra stack, right? So is that that means that's how we encounter the wish fulfilling tree, is sort of from the top?
Well, if you remember last week, I talked about that there are 2 approaches to the symbolism of this. There is the top-down approach, And then there is the bottom up approach.
Yeah.
When we die, when we give up our body and our true nature is released, it's from the top down, where we go through the Bardo of death. And then right away we are confronted, or there is the clear light. If we recognize it, which would be in the center at the very top, if we recognize it, well, we can stay there. But if we don't realize that, then we kind of go a little bit below that, and we go to the other segments, to the other Buddhas and so on. That's from the top down. As we are studying it, we're approaching it. We're talking about, what this visualization from the top down, but what we're actually doing is approaching it from the bottom up. And that'll mean more to us when we get through this whole process. Because as we approach it from the bottom up, means that that's what we're doing as ordinary human beings now, that we are cultivating our mind to be able to recognize all of this. So we recognize the very basis of things and then rise up as we go. And these are the stages of meditation. So we've been talking about that in our Buddhism 101 class. Khenpo Samtup is talking about that in his Saturday and Sunday teachings, to be able to develop that process of from the bottom up, to be able to recognize that. And then as you progress along, then you get to the levels of the Buddhas, and it begins to make sense to you. But like I said, when we die, we're just bam, it's from the top down. And if we're not prepared for it, then we wind up coming back down and getting reborn again. So here
So we encounter the clear light first.
Correct.
And so our opportunities present themselves like a holographic spiral.
Correct.
So we start at the end of the skewer, and the
Correct.
more we mess up, the more we get screwed.
Well, something like that.
Okay. I'll think of it that way.
Okay. If I can make a note right now, just a technical note. If you all are familiar with the Zoom and setting up the way in which you set your microphone and your camera, the audio and the video in the setup screen, and we can go in, I can screen share and talk to you more about it. But if you set your microphones to a level that is about 3/4 of the volume, and you turn off the automatic, because like what Michael was doing, I don't know whether you all noticed it, but he was very low. But as he continues to talk, it gets progressively louder because the automatic gain control is activating. But if you set it to being always 3/4, it's always going to stay there. And then one other setting, there are 3 background settings that are right below that on that pull down menu when you go to that screen to set up your microphone. And it says background noise or background suppression, I think it might be called. And if you set it for the middle one, there's a high, a low, and a middle. And the middle one, from my experience, is the most practical one to use, the best one to use. If you set it too high, it squashes a lot of things that if you move away from the microphone, it may not pick you up. If you set it too low, it's going to pick up a lot of the ambient noise around you. If you set it in the middle one, it's just right. So that's my experience. So if anybody needs to have a little bit more coaching on that, I'll be glad to do it.
May I add a little something to that?
Sure.
In case you're guiding a meditation or something, which I have to do often, and you want to ring a bell and you've encountered the fact that Zoom filters the bell out because it's highly vibrating, you can actually just go up to the top left-hand part of the screen and turn on original sound. So that automatically erases all the filters that are on there. and then you can turn it back to your settings by
Oh, I see.
right up there where it says, yeah, up the upper left, turn off original sound, and click there, and then turn on original sound. And on original sound means if I ring a bell.
All right. Well, we're not hearing you, to tell you the truth.
Okay,
We can barely hear you.
okay.
So,
That's, oh, yeah. And so this is original sound, and you can barely, I know why. Because I got these turned upside down.
now we can hear you.
Well, you can hear better with these turned up, but this turns the microphone toward my head. Thank you.
All right. Well, now it's better. Okay. Well, I hope that wasn't too technical for anybody, but
Yeah.
it does make it, as you can see, all these little things make this more enjoyable, these sessions more enjoyable. All right. Well, let's move back now to, I hope everybody printed these mandala frames that I sent. The idea was for you to print many copies so that you can take your notes. If anybody does not have the ability to print these and would like me to mail them to you, I'll be more than happy to do that. Please just drop me an email and I'll put 10 of them in an envelope and send them to you as soon as I can for next week. So, but these you'll find are very, very helpful to keep your notes together and keep a visualization along with the notes. So you're beginning to build this mandala and understand the reference points and the relationships of these things. Okay, if anybody has any questions, just speak right up at this time. No problem.
That's just a clarification on the level. So the blue is at the same level. It's like an inner section along with the first level of square. You're not saying it's up above. It's not higher than the Buddhas and consorts.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So
Correct.
it's like an inner sanctum, inner
Correct.
room.
Now,
Okay.
what would be higher? What is higher is if you look at the sphere that is at the top of the screen, the top of the page. You
So
see
much-
that?
Yes.
That empty sphere?
Uh-huh.
That empty sphere represents Buddha Samantabhadra,
Uh-huh.
the clear light.
Right. Okay.
So that would be at the very top, the very apex. So we put it up there to give a notion that it is above.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have any other questions now? So last time we talked about the families. We talked about the names of the families, in particular the Buddha family, the Vajra family, the Ratna family, the Padma family, and the Karma family. We identified them. We identified the Buddhas that were with those groups and their consorts. We identified the colors. Yes, does somebody have something to say?
Excuse me, yeah. What is on the left at the top of the page there? It's very faint and it
Yes.
it almost looks like a person, but it also looks like one of those
I'll tell you what it is.
over there.
It is a Buddha that is superimposed on a stupa.
Okay, that's what I thought. It was a stupa, and I thought there was a person there too.
So the proportions of the stupa are made as a human being. And actually, what that does, the stupa becomes the empirical non-conceptualization of enlightenment. If we keep looking at these pictures of the Buddhas, we keep associating, saying, oh, well, the Buddha is a human being, has a human body. You know, and that's what the primordial Buddha is. But we have to recognize that it is beyond that, that we have made these anthropomorphic associations to help us to wrap our heads around it. So the stupa is an effort to be able to take that visualization one step beyond the anthropomorphic and say that the stupa is the enlightened human being, is the enlightened Buddha. So that's why it's done as in that way like that. So all the stupas are built in that way with those proportions. So there's a graph that that the designers of the stupa would follow, the same kind of a graph that the illustrators of the paintings and the statue makers follow. That there's a strict formula for them to follow to do these things properly.
So then we have the three kayas across the top, because
The
that
three
would be
kayas.
that would be the Nirmanakaya and Samantabhadra, and Samantabhadra would be Dharmakaya, and Vajrasattva on the right would be Sambhogakaya. Or am I reading something that's not there in those three?
Yeah, you could read it that way, but it's not. Yeah, you could read it that way. That this would be that the stupa would be Nirmanakaya. Thank you. That's very observant of you. So the stupa would be the Dharmakaya, or excuse me, the Nirmanakaya. Then on the other side, the right side of the paper is Vajrasattva. And Vajrasattva it represents the Sambhogakaya, the subtle enjoyment body. And then the center sphere is the Dharmakaya, would represent, is where Samantabhadra is. So yes. So, and this is stated in the purification prayer that we recited tonight, where it says that Vajrasattva is the perfect Buddha of the resource. Exactly how it's stated, but in that prayer, it's stated that way. Let me see if I can get there real quick. I got my pages. So that's page 14. Here we are. So it says on page 15, it says thus, in the middle of the page, it says thus Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource. So the Buddha body of perfect resource is another way of saying the Sambhogakaya deities. So, okay. If anybody needs it restated, let me know. Okay, so then carrying on with the Buddha, with the mandala frame, then we have the colors that are there, so we can see those. And then we identified last week, we identified the elements that are associated with those 5 groups. So the space, the element space being in the center, being in the blue, the water being in the red, or in the white, in the eastern quadrant, and the earth being in the yellow quadrant, and the fire being in the red quadrant, and the wind being in the green quadrant. And then we identified the emotions, that the emotions that the particular deity resides in that particular quadrant then deals with a particular emotion. So we said that in the center is the emotion of delusion or pride. In the east is the emotion of hatred. In the south is the emotion of greed. And in the desire is in the Padma family. And then jealousy is in the karma family. So I'm interchanging all these words. You see how flip around from one thing to another. So getting familiar with this is important. And all these things are mentioned in these prayers and so on. So being able to make these associations with these prayers now is very, 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 very helpful. This is why we have this. This is the blessing that we have these things to be able to do that. So the emotions, then, as we work with these, that we overcome these, the antidotes with these, and then we talked about the that we developed the antidotes. Let me see. Did we do the antidotes last week? We must have. So the antidote to delusion is education. That would be in the blue. The antidote to hatred is loving kindness. The antidote to greed is generosity. The antidote to desire is meditation. The antidote to jealousy is accomplishment, is unimpededness, dauntlessness, fearlessness. So the emotion, the root emotion that we have, we've just talked about, we apply those antidotes to that. And then what develops is the wisdom. So then I know we talked about the wisdoms, that in the blue family is the wisdom, the all-pervading wisdom. And then the white family is the mirror-like wisdom. And then the yellow family is the wisdom of equanimity. And then in the red family is the wisdom of discriminating awareness. And then the green family is the all-accomplishing wisdom. So in the perfection stage of these deities, as we perfect ourselves and we begin to realize ourselves as the deity, then what we are perfecting are these wisdoms. And then we talked about the benefits of this. So in the blue family, in the center, the benefit is the growth potential, maximizing or realizing the growth potential. In the white family, the benefit is cohesion. In the yellow family, stability is in the yellow family. The benefit is stability. And the benefit in the red family is ripening. And then the benefit in the green family is movement. So these are all the pieces, and you need to contemplate this. You need to put these pieces together and see how these things actually work, and think about what each of these things mean. So one thing we didn't talk about last time that I want to expound upon tonight, or at least a couple things, is that in the center, the symbol of the blue family is the Dharma wheel, the 8-spoked Dharma wheel, which represents the Dharma, represents the teachings. The Vajra is in the blue family, in the white family in the east. And that Vajra represents the enlightened mind, the indestructible enlightened mind. And then in the jewel family, the Ratna family, the yellow family, the symbol is the jewel, the Ratna, which represents the riches, the stability that we have, or the treasure that we have in our lifetime. Our bodies, this life and so on is a treasure for us. And then the lotus in the red family represents purity, the purification. And then in the green family is the Vishra Vajra, the double Vajra, if you remember. It's a crossed Vajra, and called a Vishra Vajra. And this is the union of multiplicity. So this is a little bit, a new way of looking at this. The multiplicity is looking at all this phenomenal nature. And there's multiple possibilities, this multiplicity of things that have all these appearances that we can fixate on, that we can attach to, or we can have aversions to, jealousies of, and ignorance of, and so on like that. So this double Vajra, this Vishra Vajra, represents the union of all these multiplicities into one. All these things coming into one. So all this movement, all this is all united, all comes together. Okay, so now another thing that I want to point out, that in each one of these, I'm going to turn on the screen share. And let me see, I got to go back here. And I need to go back to the slideshow. Okay. So let's start here. Everybody can see this, I presume. So here is the Buddha Samantabhadra and his consort Samantabhadri, which represent the non-conceptual, the wisdom and compassion, which is that sphere above this mandala on this page. So the non-conceptual, that which cannot be expressed. It's beyond our human comprehension, but yet we can experience this non-conceptual through our practice. So then the next is in the center is Varanchana. Now he has a white body, and this is part of the visualization of Padmasambhava. He has a white body, but his from his heart emanates a blue light. That's how we get the blue color in the center. So Varanchana is the natural purity of consciousness of the expanse of the phenomenal reality. Now this says a lot. The natural purity of consciousness of the expanse of phenomenal reality. I'm going to turn this off for a second so we can see each other. So this expanse of this phenomenal reality is everything that we see, everything that we apprehend with our ordinary mind, that we see and so on. So, and we're processing this with that which we call our consciousness. And so Varanchana, the all-pervading wisdom, purifies this consciousness, So we have to just keep that in our mind, in our notes, and we'll experience that later on. But this is a reference point that we come back to. So this consciousness, we have to identify this now. This consciousness is one of what we call the 5 skandhas. Skandhas are spelled S-K-A-N-D-A-S, 5 skandhas. I don't have a slide for this, but the 5 skandhas are the translation of skandha, which is a Sanskrit word, is heap. These are the 5 heaps. Otherwise, sometimes translated as the 5 aggregates or the 5 compounds of which we as human beings are made up of. That we have these 5 skandhas, these 5 compounds, these 5 heaps, and consciousness is one of these things. So now it would be good to be able to identify the other one. So let me just tell you these 5 skandhas, and then we'll kind of fill in the blanks as we go. So the consciousness goes into the center, goes into the blue family, goes into that blue segment. And this is why you have many pages to do this, so that you're not all trying to keep your notes all neat and tidy. You can spread them out a little bit. So in the Vajra family, in the white family, in the East, is the skandha of form, that we have this body, we have this consciousness, now we have this form. One of the compounds, one of the heaps is our form. And the next one is in the Ratna family, the yellow family, and that is feeling, the feelings that we have, feelings. And then in the red family, the Padma family, is the skandha of perceptions. And then in the karma family, the green family, is the skandha of projections. But here in the text, it's called something else a little bit different, but you'll see how it means the same thing. So if you put down projections, it's a simple way of being able to remember this. So there's many layers to all this. Let's not get confused with all the layers. Let's keep it simple, and you can make it as complicated as you want later on. So these 5 skandhas, so when we are born, all that we are is a form. We have a body with no real consciousness, no real feelings, no real perceptions, no real projections. We're just body. But then as we develop, as we get a little bit older, from just being born as a newborn, every day, those compounds get richer and deeper. And then we begin, our form begins to recognize feelings. We begin to recognize the feeling of hunger. We begin to recognize the feeling of cold and warm. We begin the feeling of being wet, needing our clothes to be changed. We begin to develop those feelings. We begin to, the feeling of maybe loneliness or something like that, you know, that we're by ourselves. Where are our parents? I'm by myself. So feelings begin to develop. And then perceptions begin to develop out of those feelings in that form, from our crying out, from being cold or from being wet or being hungry. Then now our mother comes to us, or our father, someone comes to us and is going to take care of us. And we begin to associate the sounds because they're talking to us. We begin to associate the feelings that they're touching us. We begin to associate the warmth and the body and those things. So those feelings then begin to develop into perceptions. And then they say, oh, if I cry, my mother's going to come in. And I may not be hungry, I just may be lonely. But if I cry, my mother or my father's going to come in. So this is where we start developing many of our enabling things to enable our children to have these perceptions and so on. And then we have these projections. Then we develop projections. And we begin to project these things onto other things. And these projections may or not, may be incorrect. They may not be correct. So, but we start playing with those, and we find that as we get more sophisticated, as we get older, that we're always projecting. This is how we begin to build our personalities, that we're projecting ourselves onto situations and controlling situations and so on. Our habitual tendencies start developing out of this. So all this is, within this consciousness level, but it's a very limited consciousness, just that, with our physical body and these immediate needs, these practical immediate needs that we have. So these are the 5 skandhas. So we can see that these are related to these 5 Buddha families. So let's go back now. So Varanchana is the natural purity of this consciousness of the expanse of phenomenal reality. So our body and our life, everything around us, is this phenomenal reality. It's all phenomenal to us. The female, Akasa Datvishvari, is the queen of the expanse. This whole expansiveness, it's like she is the body of all of this. So then we go to the next one. Ascobia, Vajrasattva Ascobia. Lokana, the Buddha Lokana, the female, is queen of the expanse, same as Akasadhattvishvari. So we see that the female, this wisdom female, represents this expanse, symbolic of this expanse. The masculine is the method of dealing with this expanse, with this wisdom, actualizing this wisdom in this expanse. So now Vajrasattva Ascobia, who is in the east section, is the natural purity of form, who develops the mirror-like wisdom, the mirror-like appearance, recognizes that everything is just an appearance, but it's all relative. Then Ratnasambhava is the natural purity of feeling in equanimity. That we're feeling this in equanimity, that there's this sameness to everything. There is this balance to everything that has to be experienced to be able to, from a practical point of view, to be able to make this mean something. This equanimity, this feeling of equanimity, of sameness, the natural purity of that. Then Amitabha is the natural purity of perceptions in discernment. The Amitabha is the wisdom, the wisdom of wisdom awareness. So the natural purity of wisdom awareness in discernment. So we begin to recognize these perceptions, or we begin to develop these perceptions, and then through the purity of this, we develop our wisdom of what it is that we are going to perceive, what it is that we're going to look at. And then the next one is Amagoga City, is the natural purity of motivational tendencies and accomplishment. So this motivational tendencies, I asked you to use the word projections instead of motivational tendencies. Projections, motivational tendencies, these projections, we're projecting, if we want this, if we do this, this will happen. Motivational tendencies, projections. So as we are reading these prayers, it's stating these things, that these deities are the purification of these skandhas. Now remember, you might not have remembered this for a while. Let me see if I can get this real quick. That hello, come on. There we go. Now this illustration here, if you remember this illustration, this is Vajrasattva. This is Vajrasattva. Vajrasattva is like the hero of this whole story. It's through the embodiment of Vajrasattva and the purification of what it is to be a human being, to be able to transcend being a human being into being a Sambhogaya Buddha, a meditational deity, a Buddha of natural resource, a perfect resource, that then we become, through that purification, then we become Buddha. So the point here is that Vajrasattva, here in the heart center, are all these peaceful deities, where all the emotions and the skandhas are purified here in the heart center. Here in the brain, up here, this is where all the wrathful deities are. So we're going to get to that very soon. This is where all the wrathful deities are. The wrathful deities are emanations of the peaceful deities, but it's what happens in our brain is what blocks up our heart. Our heart is where our true nature is. This is all temporary up here, and this is where all the emotions are. And that we recognize both these two things, the heart nature and the brain nature, we recognize in the throat, being the speech. This is where our habitual tendencies are revealed. So these three spheres, these three parts of the body of Vajrasattva, our body is what we begin to recognize as this work in progress. This is the working being. This is what we have to work with. Our working nature.
Lance, what's in the speech center again? I got the other two.
Habitual tendencies. And those are we haven't talked about them yet. We're going to talk about them soon, next couple of weeks or so, are the Vidyadhara, the hero awareness holders. So we'll, just keep that in mind. You don't have to go into any detail with that right now, but we'll get there. So the natural purity, so now we can see the skandhas and we can see this natural purity of the skandhas through these 5 Buddha families.
Lance, could I ask a question?
Of course.
This really is going to be based more on your experience beyond the Bardo teachings. You know how sometimes the white and the blue positions switch depending on.
Right.
So Kenshin Gyaltsen is teaching Samsara Nirvana. I don't know if you're joining that, but I have his book and I'm in the class specifically to ask him this question. I'm waiting for him to get to it. He refers to Vairocana as in the family leading hate, the poison is hatred. It's kind of like Akshobhya and Vairocana are switched.
That's correct.
What is there a teaching that's based on? Like, I just need like context to understand when this is in play versus that. It seems arbitrary to me. I don't have the right context.
I understand. And I don't have a clear answer except to say that this is Padmasambhava's vision of this process. So it starts out exactly the way the Kenshin is discussing it, where the blue family is in the east and the white family is in the center. So I don't have a good explanation for it, but that's it.
Okay, that's
I would
okay.
like to hear what Kenshin would have to say about that.
You'd even tell me, how should I ask the question? Because yeah, I'm just,
But in other practices, you can go to other practice. There are Kala Chakra practices where colors are even switched around even more. So the point is that we see that all this is talking about symbolism, is using symbolism to represent this phenomenal nature. And then what we're doing is processing ourselves to be able to transcend all these vicissitudes, all these changes. If we hold on to these changes, we're fooling ourselves. We're just chasing after things that just are imaginations, that are just symbolisms, that what we are really need to be allowing ourselves to do is to be free of these things, to be in the Dharmakaya. So if you find yourself holding on to these things, remember to let go.
And Lance, we have Vajrasattva twice. We have Vajrasattva Sambhogakaya up in the upper right, and then we have Vajrasattva Akshobhya.
Good point.
And so, I mean, well, that's wonderful richness, I guess, but why twice? I know that's a level of detail, but
can you see this picture?
yes.
Okay, so here we are, this humble yogi, yogini, who here is out in the meadow someplace. He's in his cave someplace. He's in his hermitage someplace. He's in his meditation room someplace. And he's visualizing Vajrasattva as a red body, like Amitabha. He's visualizing Vajrasattva as Varanchana with a white body. He's visualizing Vajrasattva as Amagog City with a green body. He's visualizing Vajrasattva with a yellow body as Ratnasambhava. And he's visualizing Vajrasattva as Ascobia with a blue body. Remember, Vajrasattva is the hero of all this story.
So we could have Vajrasattva before the names of each of the other Buddhas.
Correct.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
So it's like through Vajrasattva's eyes, if you will, that we are seeing all this display.
Okay.
But if we haven't gotten to that point, it's because we're all clouded up. We haven't even got to that point yet.
Mm-hmm.
Who or what is Vajrasattva?
Vajrasattva is the holy enlightened being, is the indestructible holy being. Vajra means the indestructible holy mind, wisdom mind. And Sat is a being, Sattva is a holy being. So Vajrasattva is the indestructible mind of the enlightened being, of the holy being.
Okay, so now, and that is in front of all the other Buddhas?
Well,
or can be, or what?
We are seeing ourselves as Vajrasattva. As Vajrasattva, then we see ourselves as these Buddha families. As we purify ourselves to become Vajrasattva. As we become purified Vajrasattva, then we purify to see ourselves to become these Buddhas.
Okay, is that like the I am feeling or
Well, it's beyond the I am. If you're holding on to the I am, you know, it's you gotta let go of the I am. You know,
so this is, if I just say it again, Vajrasattva is a step beyond the Buddha.
no, there's a step towards the Buddha.
Step towards the Buddha or a step of the Buddha or in the Buddha?
A step toward it is a purified human being. A purified human being who has gotten to the perfect resource, to the Sambhogagaya level, the meditational level of the Buddhas. You can meditate on this, you can visualize this. Now, we may not be there right now. We're struggling with this, but that's where we need to go. That's a first big step. That's the purification. That's why we do this purification practice every day that we recited tonight.
Okay, so when you get there, what is the next step?
Then to visualize the 5 Buddha families, the 5 Buddhas and the 5 Buddha families, which they themselves are meditational deities. They are meditational deities. They are all part of the Sambhogagaya.
The Sambhogagaya is what?
The subtle enjoyment body.
Excuse me?
The subtle enjoyment body.
The subtle enjoyment body?
Correct.
So that's not the physical body.
Correct. It's within the, well, it's within the brain of the body, but is meditational part. It is the meditational part. So it is transcendent.
So then the next step beyond that is Buddhahood.
And when that is stabilized, one becomes the perfect mind of the Buddha, then it becomes Dharmakaya. One becomes the truth body. And one stops being and it all becomes the same. It becomes unexpressive. It becomes non-conceptual. That is liberation. When there's no difference between any of this. So, and the work to do this is through meditation. We can intellectualize this, but until we really engage in meditation practice, it just remains this intellectualization contemplation, which is good, it's helpful, and maybe that's as far as we can get. You know, we have limited resources. We've had many lives to get where we are. We have many lives to go. So have gratitude for where we are and rest in where we are with happiness, with joyfulness, and say, I may not get to being a Buddha in this lifetime, but I know that I am within Buddha. Buddha is within me. You know, I just don't have the purity to be able to recognize it yet. But yet I'm going to take my clothes off and I'm going to put on another suit of clothes, and then I'm going to be a little bit closer to it. But that suit of clothes happens to be your body. So you're going to drop this body when you die, and then you're going to be reborn into another body that is going to be ready to be able to get to a little closer to that Buddha awareness, to that Buddha perfection. So by doing these teachings, what we're working at is we won't fall backwards. We won't go into the lower realms, but we still have work to do in the upper realms, in the higher realms. And if
When
you
you're
can see, I'm sorry, if you can see your life as a continuum instead of just now, as a continuum, that now is just part of this continuum. So I'm sorry, William, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
when you're saying awareness and meditation with the Buddha, those are the same?
Meditation is the key to be able to recognize our true nature. Without meditation, I don't know of a way to do it. Most people I know that have attained this have attained this through meditation at some point, to some degree in their lives, to be able to get to this.
What is considered our true nature then?
Liberation, freedom.
That's not Buddhahood, is it?
Yes, it is. The way we would explain it conceptually, that's how we explain it. Love, pure love. Love and compassion. This is what we talk about all the time in Buddhism 101, and the Lamas talk about in their teachings, and the different practices and prayers that we do.
Okay, so what we're practicing doing is having love and compassion.
Correct. And we already have love and compassion, but we're becoming more and more stable in it for other beings, for the sake of the enlightenment of other beings. So I got to leave it here because we're at the end of our time. Does anybody else have a question or comment that you'd like to make at this time?
My head hurts. This was wonderful. Thank you.
So these are all building blocks of our meditation. You know, we say meditation, but meditation is a process. And part of the process is contemplation. What are we going to contemplate? Are we going to contemplate our miserable lives all the time? Or are we going to contemplate what it is to be a Buddha, what it is to be a Bodhisattva? So we're trying to change that which we think about all the time. When we talk about the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, and we talk about impermanence, and we say that we are consumed by the 8 worldly concerns. This is what we think about all the time as being ordinary beings. Pleasure and pain, fame and disgrace, praise and blame, gain and loss. That's what we think about all the time. So now we're trying to replace that with thinking about the Sambhogagaya. Think about what it is to be a Buddha. Think about what it is, nirvana and samsara. To look at things from a different point of view. So these are the vocabulary, these are the illustrations of that mindfulness. We're changing our mindfulness. Anybody else got a comment or question? All right. Well, if you have comments or questions, write them down, please. You know, something's going to happen. I hope you're reading these things in between our sessions. You know, if you're really trying to make a study of this book, the Bardo Thodol, which is a great treasure, you need to be thinking about it, and questions are about to come up. Doubts are going to come up. So when those doubts come up, put them in the form of a question. Let's talk about them. So this week, we didn't even get to the part of the bodhisattvas yet. So next week, we're going to continue because this is very important. We can't go to the next parts, or we can't do it successfully without having a firm foundation of the vocabulary of what we're talking about. You know, we got to understand what's being discussed here. So I hope you understand. This is why we said it was going to take a long time, you know, and we're not putting any kind of a time frame onto this study. And if anybody wants to join Buddhism 101, you're welcome to do that. We're talking about the stages of meditation, and we'll be talking more about the Dharma again soon. And so you're welcome to join us for that if you need that. All right. Debbie, will you put up the Sukhavati prayer, please? So everybody should recite this with Debbie.
Emaho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha of boundless light. On the right side is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful pure land of Dewachen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewachen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. By the power and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve all knowingness by defeating all enemies, confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of suffering. As Manjushri the warrior realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om. ah, hum. Om, ah, hum. Om, ah, hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Thank you all very much. Next week, we'll finish it. We'll surely do the Bodhisattvas.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Is this
Thank
been
you,
helpful?
everyone. Thank
Is this
you.
too much? Is this too much detail?
No. Great.
Thank you, Len.
It's actually all
Thank you,
starting to
Lance.
come together.
welcome.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you
Good
so much,
night.
everyone.
Good night.
Thanks,
welcome.
Lance.